We've done a ton of stuff to my Evo 10 since I bought it a couple of months ago. We've obviously fixed the major cosmetic flaws with this car and made it look a lot nicer and a lot more to my style. We've also improved the handling with sway bars and new coilovers, and this thing will carve mountain roads like no other. We've also changed the turbo out from a Garrett GTX 3582 to a much newer G30 900 turbo, and this thing now spools up much quicker. It's honestly a blast to drive around town. But there's still a few more things wrong with this car that we're gonna fix in this episode. The first and probably most obvious repair that we need to make is the fitment with the fender and the side skirt here. There's a huge gap that I can stick my finger in on both sides. It looks atrocious. But also, these fenders are fiberglass and they've seen a few cracks here, and the other side is much worse. But I have a solution to my fender problems, and that is this little cutout right here, which actually fits right in there into the fender. This doesn't really do much other than disturb the air behind it. So this little blade here will actually help the aero by giving it a little bit of an air curtain, but it still leaves a little bit of an escape here from behind the wheel. I think it looks really good. I think it'll be a nice addition. However, I've got to get this painted, and I also have to get the fender painted to fix these cracks up here. We're gonna have to take the fenders off. And that's not the only thing we're taking off. We also have to remove the front bumper because there's a good number of spider cracks and just kind of its age is starting to show, and there's a good number of rock chips in the front lip here. So it'd be a good idea to take this off and get it repainted. I also kind of want an excuse to change out these front carbon canards because they're a little bit faded as well. So we'll put some new ones onto that so there's nice fresh carbon on there. Yeah, the car should look pretty good with some fresh paint. So let's take the bumper off and let's take the fenders off.
3 weeks later, and I came to pick up my freshly painted parts, but also my car. I ended up dropping off the whole car with Steve because we ended up blending in the door. This makes the freshly painted front end blend in with the rest of the car.
This had a litany of cracks. So the more we fixed it, the more we found. So we kept going over it and over and over until finally we got to a point where we think we got them all. But yeah, it was rough.
I put Steve through a lot with this car because the body panels were in worse shape than we expected. But he did an amazing job on it, and I can't wait to put it all back together.
Okay, so we've got the Evo back here at our shop, at Gears and Gasoline shop, and we've got to put this car back together. But before we do that, we have a couple other little miscellaneous things that I want to do, like paint these hella horns while it's easy to access, and put the little fender pieces onto the fenders, and maybe freshen up the bumper with some new carbon canards, as well as putting the bumper actually together. The paint looks really nice, so I think the car is going to look absolutely perfect. Horns are pretty cheap, and I'm not gonna take the time to actually paint the horn part of it. These things are like, I don't know what they are, 40 bucks. They're not nothing crazy. I'm just trying to do this super quick because I don't want this peeking through the bumper. There we go. Much better, it blends in. The goal is that you don't notice it. Okay, now that I got the horns in, I actually am reminded of these little guys, which is an intercooler air guide. It sits right behind the front bumper, and one side is just not connected, and then this side is zip tied up. And I thought, oh, maybe it's just missing a clip here. So I brought my little thing of clips and went to go clip it in, and I noticed that it's still sticking out a bit. And you can see a bunch of rub marks on the front of it, which means it's been rubbing into the bumper. So I want to fix that. This is like super minor, but this is the stuff that like really make a car overall much more polished and refined and better. I'm just gonna grind that down. Beautiful. Okay, so this is obviously the fender. It is freshly painted, it looks beautiful, and now I'm gonna mess it up because it is not ready to bolt onto the car yet. We have to put this piece on it, which is the fender blade. We gotta attach this, and in order to do that, we have to drill holes in the fender, both in this part and also this part. So our freshly painted pieces I have to drill holes in, which is my least favorite thing. But also because this is aftermarket, it doesn't fit perfectly. It needs to be twisted a little bit, so I'm worried about cracking with that. But I'm gonna drill holes into this first, put it into place, and then mark where the holes in the fender need to go. Then drill the holes in the fender, and then hopefully bolt it all up, and it'll kind of all slide into place. And hopefully I won't ruin anything. Yeah. That's like easily the most difficult thing to do. I mean, yeah, it's simple, but like, it's so hard. I could never do RWB. There's no way. I hate this part. Because what if I mess up? I'm gonna have a heart attack, man. So now that we have the fender blade on, now I have to cut the fender even more. The tires, the big old steamroller tires, were rubbing on these, so I'm gonna cut them away. Obviously you can't roll them, it's fiberglass. So I'm just gonna cut them right under here. You won't be able to visually tell any difference from the outside of the car. I'm actually kind of surprised that the fender goes in that far. Clearly meant to hold like a fender liner or something like that, which we don't have anyway. So I'm gonna cut that back so we can fit those big old steamrollers. Weight reduction. Yeah, that's a good look. Oh, that makes the wheel fit so much better. Yeah, that's nice. Still gonna spray dirt all along the side of the car from this little vent, but okay, I have the bumper all assembled except for the carbon canards that go on the side. These little things, they rivet in the side here. But the old canards that we had are a bit faded, like most of the other carbon pieces that were on this car. So I have some new ones. You can visually tell how much nicer the new ones are. I mean, I guess maybe not that much, but it looks a lot nicer, and they weren't that expensive. Got them from MA Performance, like most of the other stuff on this car. So now we can have some fresh, brand new carbon on our fresh, brand new painted bumper. I just have to figure out how to work a rivet gun, which I think is pretty simple though. Okay, canards are on, all the pieces are assembled, fenders are together, bumpers together. I can start reassembling some of this stuff. I'm gonna start with the fenders and kind of work my way forward. And I know there's gonna be a little bit of a weird fitment with the side skirt and the fender, so let me get the car up on a lift because I'm probably gonna want to take these front wheels off so I can get in there and get all the fitment to be perfect. One of the bolts that holds this fender on sticks right here, right near the wheel, and actually I think that's what the contact point was on the other side. So I'm putting in this lower profile looking dress-up bolt which is titanium, and also red, which blends in, so it doesn't kind of like say hello, bolt. And yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm like super happy with that. Okay, got the car on the ground. Fenders are looking real good. Honestly, everything is fitting really nicely. The paintwork is immaculate. It looks brand new. Bumper's on, lip is on, everything is on. When we were in Minnesota, we replaced the battery in this car because it was dead with a new battery, but it seems like I still have a power draw issue. I was hoping maybe it was just a dead battery, but the car continues to die even with a brand new battery in there. So we've got to chase this power draw, and I have no idea where to start, which is why we have David here somewhere. David is here. David is our good friend and also electrical wizard, and he's gonna help find the power draw in this car.
All right, so I'm gonna go around, I'm gonna pop the hood, open the doors and the trunk. I'm gonna trip all the latches and the doors. You've got door buttons here, which tells your computer that the doors are shut. I'm gonna clamp those, vice grip, C-clamp, trip the hood latch, hook my meter up to the battery, and then wait 30 minutes.
David, are you a cop? Is this a speed camera?
It is a speed camera for temperature. This is a bit more of a high-tech way of finding these draws. In most situations, what you would do is you would just go through the fuse box and start pulling fuses with pliers, or checking them with a multimeter like this for voltage across the fuse. Right now we're seeing this relay on the left-hand side. Looks like it's activated. We see 174 milliamps. There's definitely a power draw. Should only be about 20 to 60 milliamps. Now we're just gonna unplug stuff and see what happens.
Same amp draw.
Same amp draw.
Ooh.
Well, I guess we gotta do it the hard way.
What's the hard way?
Check every fuse one by one with a voltmeter. It's not really difficult.
The time-consuming way.
Oh yeah, it's time consuming.
So we have pulled all of the fuses, not all of them, but like 98% of the fuses, and have not found a power draw, but we have a new discovery. We disconnected the Motec ECU, just out of curiosity, see if we can narrow some things down, and our power draw went away, but it came back, obviously, when we plugged it back in, but not immediately after we plugged it back in. We plugged it back in and then had to key on the ignition, which then turned it on. So now we're chasing a module. Okay, we got some diagrams out for the Motec ECU. It's an M130, so we have the pinout for that, as well as fuse box diagrams and these colorful little back probe pins.
That's right.
We've chased down the power ignition source of the ECU to this pin right here. So when the key is turned on, it powers on the ECU. So we've depinned this, if you will, so that the ECU doesn't power on when we turn the ignition on, and found that there is no longer a power draw. So that means that the power draw is coming through this one little pin through the ECU. This is what's killing our battery right here. So we're gonna, what, put this on a relay?
We'll hook it to a relay or to a switch. That way, when you get in the car, you either flip the switch or it'll feed off something like the headlights or anything else that's key on ignition. 5 hours.
5 hours to find that one pin?
5 hours to find an ECU that just by its design draws 200 milliamps when it's off.
The solution to our problems, as usual, is found at Advance Auto. We found a 4-pin relay that we were able to trigger the ECU from a keyed power source, so the ECU stops draining my battery power.
So we have the relay. We're gonna get this hooked up to a keyed power source. That way, whenever the key is turned on, it turns the ECU on, and we should be good to go.
Okay, now that we have the wiring done, I've got the car back up in the air so we can finish the bodywork. And the main thing that we need to do here is the front lip. It's not really fully attached. It's got 2 screws on the side, and that's it. It's a Vaultz front lip, and it kind of just rests on the front bumper here, and that is it. So I'm gonna make a plate that connects between the skid plate and the front lip so that it kind of ties everything together, helps the airflow underneath, and makes the front lip a lot more sturdy. If I hit a squirrel, this thing is gone. Definitely need to do something about that. That's not going anywhere. Now we've got bracing from here to here all the way down to the bottom under tray, which helps airflow, and also obviously this lip is not going to fall off anymore. But because the plate is attached on the bottom and there's nothing attached on the top, it still actually has a little bit of give, which is a really good thing for a low car, because if you're scraping the front lip on anything, you want it to give and not crack. So if I hit a curb a little hard, this lip is just going to slide up a little bit before it cracks. So honestly, it's the best of both worlds. It's super sturdy, but also has a little bit of flex. Okay, now we're gonna get to something that's bothered me since day one, since I first sat in this car, and honestly, since I drove it 6 years ago, and that is this gauge cluster, gauge pod mount setup. It's nice to have the gauges here. It's a wideband and a boost gauge, and it's nice to be able to see them, but it does block the speedo and the tach. Basically anything below 3,000 RPM and anything below 40 miles an hour, I can't see at all. So, we're gonna change that with a better gauge pod. There is a company that molds into the gauge bezel surrounds these little gauge pods off to the side more, so they're a little bit more out of the way so I can see the gauge cluster. So let's get to it. There we go. So much better. The gauges are off to the side. You can see them. You can see everything in the center. You can also see it. Oh man, this is the way to go. Much better. Oh yeah, one more thing. I got a new hood. All right, the last piece of the build is a brand new Cybon Carbon OEM hood. Now I know what you're thinking. Isn't that the same hood that's currently on the car? Yes, it is, but the hood that's currently on the car is pretty faded. There's cracking and fading mostly near where the hood scoop is, and I can tell it's been re-cleared once before. So I'm just gonna take that hood off and put a fresh, brand new hood on that I know has that nice deep carbon look to it. So let's put it on, the last piece of the build. I really like how it's turning out, and yeah, let's finish it. Oh man, that is so much better. Wow. Incredible. Well, that's gonna do it for this Evo build episode and also the Evo build in its entirety. I think I've gotten the car now finally to a point where I really like it. I think it looks awesome.
Man, are you gonna leave these bolts in here?
Yeah, I mean,
They're crusty, man.
yeah, it's all right.
I can get you some bolts from Dress Up Bolts. They're right there.
Okay, one more thing. We'll just do one more thing.
All right.
I say this about all my cars, but I can just never finish a build. There's still more that I want to do to this car, but I think I've hit the right balance point with where it's at right now. Honestly, this build has been a bit of a distraction for me. There's still so much that I want to do to my other cars. Just like putting these fresh titanium bolts on the car, I can get carried away. The car has thousands of bolts, and I'd love to replace them all with titanium, but that's just not realistic. I'm going to just replace a few of the really bad looking bolts on top and tie this build series off with a bow. We've really transformed this car from its crusty condition when I bought it. Honestly, it's amazing to see just how much it's changed in just a few months. I really enjoy working on cars, and even more when I can take a car that's in rough shape and clean it up. I get a strong sense of satisfaction from bringing a car like this back to life. And maybe I'm biased, but I think this is probably the coolest looking Evo 10 that I've ever seen.